खुशनुदी इमाम ज़माना बुलंदतर सलावत अल्लाहुम्मा सल्ली अला मुहम्मद व आले मुहम्मद। इंशाअल्लाह आज से और रोज़ जुमेरात से संडे तक मौलाना तैयब मूसवी साहब खिताब फरमाएंगे और मजलिस मौलाना जो हैं 9 बजे इंशाअल्लाह शार्प मेंबर पे तशरीफ़ लाएंगे। आप से इल्तमास है कि वक्त पर तशरीफ़ लाइए। तैयब की सेहत और सलामती के लिए बुलंदतर सलावत।
औज़ु बिल्लाहि मिनश शैतानिर रजीम बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम अल्हम्दुलिल्लाहिल्लज़ी ला यब्लुगु मिदहतुहुल क़ाइलून वला युसीना माहुल अद्दून वला युअद्दी हक़्क़हुल मुज्तहिदून अल्लज़ी ला युद्रिकुहु बहदुल हिमम वला यनालुहु गौसुल फितन अल्लज़ी लैसा लिसिफ़तिही हद्दुन महदूदुन वला नातुन मौजूदुन वला वक़्तुन महदूदुन वला अजलुन ममदूद फ़तरा अल-ख़लाइक़ बिक़ुदरतिही व नशर रियाह बिरहमतिही व वत्तद बिस्सुख़ुर मयदाना सुम्मा अस्सलातु वस्सलामु अला अशरफिल अन्बिया वल मुरसलीन व हबीबिना व हबीब रब्बिल आलमीन अबिल क़ासिम मुहम्मद अल्लाहुम्मा व अला अहलि बैतिही अत्तय्यबीन अत्ताहिरीन वल्लअन अला अदाइहिम अजमईन मिन अव्वलि यौमि ज़ुल्मिहिम इला क़ियामि यौमिद्दीन। अम्मा बाद फ़क़ाल अल्लाह सुब्हानहु व तआला फ़ी किताबिहिम मुबीन व क़ौलुहुल हक़ बिस्मिल्लाहिर रहमानिर रहीम लन तनालुल बिर्र हत्ता तुनफ़िक़ू मिम्मा तुहिब्बून व मा तुनफ़िक़ू मिन शैइन फ़इन्नल्लाहा बिही अलीम। सदक़ल्लाहुल अलियुल अज़ीम। अल्लाहुम्मा सल्लि अला मुहम्मदिन व अली मुहम्मद। Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This verse that I started this lecture off with, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. The translation, by no means will you attain goodness, by no means will you reach goodness unless you give from what you love. Unless you give from what you love. وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. And when you give from what you love, and whatever it is that you give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows of it. One of the signs of a mu'min, a true mu'min, is that they're willing to give open-handed. One of the signs of a true mu'min is that they're unselfish. And such a person, they're constantly struggling in their life, and they're constantly struggling with their property towards this goal of achieving whatever it is that they've set their mind to. If someone has set their mind to something, whatever it is, whether it be something worldly or something otherworldly, if they have completely set their mind to it, nothing will come in their way from achieving that goal. You see, for example, that there are times when it's very difficult to even get $1 out of someone that is very stingy. It's very difficult to even get $1 out of them. But when you see that, or when they see that their son, their daughter, their children, they're suffering from some sort of disease, they're suffering from some sort of ailment, they will spend half of their wealth, they will spend all of their wealth, they'll go into debt just to make sure that their children are safe, just to make sure that their children are healthy again. What's happened now? This individual for whom it's very difficult to even take out $1, what happens? Now all of their existence is focused on just making sure that their children are healthy. And when their whole existence is focused on just one thing, what do? No time, no money, nothing will get in their way of making sure that they achieve their goal. They achieve their goal. And without doubt, they'll exert as much energy as they can. You see that this is what happens. Parents, when their children are sick, they'll be in the hospital with them. When they are sick, they won't even go to their work. Why? Because the child is sick. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. When they're sick, they won't even go to work. When they're sick, The parents that wouldn't even care about namaz, then they're worried about namaz and they start praying. So it goes without saying, this love that exists in an individual, this is this type of feeling that you can't describe with logic. You can't describe love through logic. Why? Because this is a feeling, when it comes to history, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he will go into the fire. When it comes to Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, what will he do? He will cross that ocean. When it comes to Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam, what will he do? He will sacrifice his whole family for this ishq, for this love. For this love. The lecture for tonight, the topic for tonight, is this verse. لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will not reach goodness unless you give from what you love, unless you sacrifice what you love. And this sacrifice is very difficult for a lot of people, this sacrifice. When you look at the events of Karbala, what was it that these people loved the most? Any individual. What is it that any individual loves the most? Alaykum assalam wa rahmatullah. Every individual, there's nothing that they love more than their own life. Every individual loves their own life. You look at Karbala, when they were acting upon this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not accept goodness until you give from what you love. This birr, in the context of Karbala, what was it that they had that they gave up? Was it money? They had no money. There was no wealth. What was it? Abu Abdullah al-Hussein, he gave up his own life. He gave up his own family. He gave up his own family. And it becomes very difficult for us to even give $1 for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Very difficult to give even $1 for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. But if you analyze this verse, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. If you're aware with Arabic grammar, the particle lan, it comes to mean nafil abadi. It comes to mean everlasting negation. It comes to mean indefinite negation. Just the same way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says when Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, what does he say? وَلَمَّا جَاءَ مُوسَى لِمِيقَاتِنَا وَكَلَّمَهُ رَبُّهُ قَالَ رَبِّي أَرِنِي أَنظُرْ إِلَيْكَ. When Hazrat Musa alayhi salam, he says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Ya Allah, show yourself to me so I can see you, so I can cast my eyes on you. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? He says, lan tarani. This same particle lan is used with Hazrat Musa alayhi salam. And what does that mean? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Ya Musa, you will never be able to see me. You will never be able to see me. Not in this world, not in the next world. The same way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala uses that particle lan tanalul bir. You will never reach goodness. Not in this world, not in the next world. Unless you give from what you love. Unless you give. We'll get to the inner meaning of this verse. The zahiri meaning, I want to first focus on that zahiri meaning and then go to the batini meaning. But you will never reach goodness. You will never reach righteousness. Not in this world, not in the next world. And the batini meaning of this verse, it makes more sense. But you will never, not in this world, not in the next world, never reach it unless you give from what you love. And when you do give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what does He say? When you give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows what you've given. What you've given. There's a lesson that needs to be learned here. Every year, we'll donate clothes. When they're too old for us, then we donate. When there's something that we don't need at home, we donate. The computer has gotten old now, donate it. The clothes have gotten old, they're out of fashion, they're out of style, they don't fit me anymore, they're tattered, donate. What do? We give the worst that we have. After it's been completely used up, there's no use. When I have no use for this, that's when I give. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no, I don't want the worst that you have. I want the best that you have. The fact that we do this, whose sunnat do we practice? Hazrat Adam, he had two sons, Habil and Qabil. Habil, he gave the best that he had. Qabil, he gave the worst that he had. So whose sunnat do we follow? We're all from Hazrat Habil's, we're all from Hazrat Adam alayhi salam, but we're following the sunnat of that one son that is being punished until the day of judgment. Instead of giving the best, we're giving the worst. And to who? To Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Oh, we don't need this anymore, give it to the center. It's getting old. This furniture is getting old, donate it to the center. This computer is getting old, donate it to the center. All of these things. This isn't what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants the best. And that too, the Holy Prophet, what does he say? Very famous narration. Whatever that you love for yourself, you should love for your mu'min brother. Whatever it is that you love for yourself. If you love for yourself to have new clothes, then why would you give your mu'min brother tattered clothes and old clothes? If you love for yourself to have things that are new, then why would you give your brother in faith things that are old? What sunnat are we following? What sunnat? But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in this verse, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ وَمَا تُنْفِقُوا مِنْ شَيْءٍ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ بِهِ عَلِيمٌ. Whatever it is that you give, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala surely knows of it. Correct? But there's a deeper meaning of this verse. What does birr truly mean? When you look at translations, birr, they translate it to mean righteousness, they translate it to mean good deeds. You will never reach righteousness. But a companion of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. A companion of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, he comes, this narration is from Tafsir al-Burhan. He comes to him, and Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he sees that Mufazzil bin Umar, that's the name of the companion, he has money with him. He has khums money. And as soon as he sees this, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he looks at Mufazzil and he says, Mufazzil, he points to that bag of coins and he said, Mufazzil, we don't accept this because we're in need of it. I'm not accepting this because I'm in need of it. No, the only reason I'm accepting this is so the mu'mineen can be purified. The only reason I accept this is so their amal can be purified. The only reason I'm accepting this is that wealth that he's gained for that year, it can be purified for him to use. This is how important khums is in our faith. That's the only reason I'm accepting this. And then he goes on to say this verse. He says, Mufazzal, this khums, this money that's supposed to be brought to us, he goes on and he says that I've heard from my father, meaning what? I've heard from Imam Muhammad Baqir alayhi salam. And what does he say? He says, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. The one for whom a whole year passes by and he does not arrive to us with his wealth, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala won't even look at him on the day of judgment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not even look at him on the day of judgment. And then he goes on to say, O Mufazzal, this bringing of wealth is an obligation which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made wajib. For who? His Shi'as. For who? His Shi'as. Meaning what? If you truly consider yourself a Shia of Imam Jafar Sadiq alayhi salam, if you truly consider yourself a Shia of the Ahlul Bayt, the Imam says that this is wajib for you to give. Allah ya Ali. The Imam, he goes and he recites this same verse. He says, Mufaddal, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, you will never attain righteousness, you will never even reach birr unless you give from what you love. And the Imam, he says, Mufaddal, we are that birr. We are that birr. Meaning what? You will never reach us. Never, not in this world, not even in the next world. You will never reach us unless you give from what you love. Unless you give from what you love. This is something for everyone to think about. Imam, he says that we are the bir. And we say that we want to get closer to Imam Zaman al-Islam. We want to get closer to Amir al-Mu'mineen. We want to get closer to Imam Hussein al-Islam. Imam, he said, you won't even get close to us, not in this world, not even in the next world, unless you give from what you love. So what is it that you love? Some people, it's their life. Some people, just like past generations, money. Money. The reason khums is an obligation in Islam is, if you ask the ulama, they say if every Shia paid their khums and gave zakat, there would be no poor Shia in the world. It doesn't matter if it's $1, it doesn't matter if it's $10,000. But if every Shia just paid their khums, there would be no poor Shia in the world. By not giving that right, what are we actually doing? We're taking away a right of another mu'min. Not just that, but if we're going to be frank, this is the right of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. You can do all the matam that you want, but if you don't give the right of the Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam, then you're still in the saf of Abu Bakr, Umar, Usman. How is it possible that on one side you curse those people that took away the rights of the Ahlul Bayt, but on the other side you do the same? At that time, then you're being a hypocrite. And you have a whole surah in the Quran about hypocrisy. Today we say that we're with Imam Zaman al-Islam. And inshallah we will be with Imam Zaman al-Islam. But with Imam Zaman al-Islam, there is no hypocrisy. You shouldn't try to want to be just the soldiers of Imam Zaman al-Islam. Everyone should have the mentality that I want to be one of the 313 of Imam Zaman. Everyone should have that mentality. Why do I say this? Allama Hilli, when his son, he was going into the Hawza, he asked him, why do you want to go into the Hawza? Why do you want to go to the Hawza? And the son replies, so I can be a great alim like you. So I can be a great alim like you. Allama Hilli says, if that's the case, then stay home. Stay home. And he goes, Ya Abati, why? Father, why? He goes, this status that I've reached, I've only been able to achieve this status. Why? Because when I went into the Hawza, I wanted to be like Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam. I wanted to be like Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam. Does he not know that he can't be like him? No, he knows that. But he wants to teach his son to what? To not sell yourself short. Achieve or try to achieve or get to the highest station that you can. Why? Allama Hilli knows that he can't reach that station of Imam Jafar as-Sadiq alayhi salam, but he can try to reach the station beneath it. But he won't be able to reach that station beneath it unless his eyes are on Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. So he tells his son, if your eyes are on me, then your station is going to be even below me. So don't keep your eyes on me. Keep your eyes on him. This is a lesson for everyone. Whatever it is that you want to do, it can be applied to the world. Whatever it is that you want to do in the world, your eyes should not be on just anybody. Your eyes should be whoever is at the top of that field. Whoever is at the top. When it came to Islam, but when it came to all of the ulums, obviously it was Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. That's why Allama Hilli, he said Imam Sadiq. But many of us, we don't think this way. I want to be the best doctor there is. I want to be the best lawyer there is. I want to, whatever that you want to specialize in, then look at the best in that field. If you can't go above and beyond, then you'll be at the very least at their level or below. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This is the reason that you shouldn't wait for the centers to come and ask you, or for the centers to come and say, we need money for this. we need money for that. No, it's every single individual's responsibility to go to the center and ask them, what is it that you need from me? What is it that you need from me? Do you need money? I have money I can give. Do you need my time? I have time that I can give. What is it that you need from me? But what do? We wait when the center comes. We wait for the center. To understand the significance of the sacrifice, where do we have to go? We have to look at the sacrifice of Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. Because I'm going to compare the two sacrifices. There was a sacrifice that was done in Mina, alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. There was a sacrifice that was done in Mina, and there was a sacrifice that was done in Karbala. Let's analyze that sacrifice, because the one in Mina was also sacrificing life. The one in Karbala was also sacrificing life. So there is something that is comparable there. But let's analyze those two events. When it comes to the story of Hazrat Ibrahim and Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he prayed for a son. And when he was praying, what was he saying? Rabbi habli min as-salihin. Ya Allah, give me someone who would be righteous. Give me a righteous son. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala replies, فَبَشَّرْنَاهُ بِغُلَامٍ حَلِيمٍ. And we gave the glad tidings of a forbearing son. Ghulam and Halim. This Halim is not the Urdu Halim that you all are aware of. This Halim is Arabic. It means forbearing. Okay? So, Hazrat Ibrahim, look at the dua Hazrat Ibrahim is doing. Hazrat Ibrahim is asking for a righteous son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he replies and he says that we gave him a forbearing son. What does this tell you about righteousness and forbearance? Hazrat Ibrahim is asking for a righteous son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says we gave him a forbearing son. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only give something that is better than that was asked for. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only give something that is better than that which was asked for. Righteousness is here, forbearance is here. This is the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala works. But the narrations, they state, when Hazrat Ismail, he got to that age of 13, 14, then Hazrat Ibrahim, he took him because he had seen a dream. Not just once, not just twice, but 3 times. And in that dream, he sees that he is sacrificing Hazrat Ismail for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what does he do? He takes Hazrat Ismail, he ties him up, and he tries to sacrifice him. The narration said that the knife, it would not cut the throat of Hazrat Ismail. And when it wouldn't cut, what does he do? He throws it, and it was so sharp that it goes and it sticks into a rock. When it sticks into the rock, Hazrat Ibrahim looks at that knife and he says that you're this sharp that you're able to go through and pierce this rock, but you can't pierce the throat of my son. And that knife replies that Khalil wants me to do it, but Jalil does not want me to do it. The friend of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants me to do it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, he's telling me not to do it. We all only talk about the miracle of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam and how he was tossed into the fire and the fire did not touch him. But when we look at this itself, this event, is this not a miracle of Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam? A knife that was so sharp, it's able to pierce through a rock. But that same knife is not able to cut the throat of Hazrat Ismail. That same knife. But you look at this event, compare this event. And when this whole event happened, then that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَنَادَيْنَاهُ أَنْ يَا إِبْرَاهِيمُ قَدْ صَدَّقْتَ رُؤْيَا. Ya Ibrahim, you have truly made your vision come true. You have truly proven your vision. And what was that vision? About him sacrificing. And then he goes on to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, إِنَّ حَازَ لَهُ بَلَاءٌ مُبِينٌ وَفَدَّيْنَاهُ بِذِبْحٍ عَظِيمٍ. This was a manifest test for you. This was a trial for you. And this trial, we have left it for the coming generations. And this is what I want to compare now. Coming generations. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Zibh al-Azim, a great sacrifice. If it's a great sacrifice, then the sacrifice has to be great in absoluteness, not just in one aspect, but in every aspect. What do I mean? If in Mina, it was a father that was sacrificing one son, then greatness would be that in Karbala, it's a father that sacrifices every son he has. Every son he has. If in Mina, it's a father, not just one son. If he's sacrificing one son, if he's sacrificing for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then in Karbala it should be for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. 2. 3. The father in Mina, what does he do? He ties his eyes so he could sacrifice his son. The father in Karbala, he's looking while his son Ali al-Akbar is struck. He's looking while his son Ali al-Asghar is struck in the throat. Compare the two scenarios. You look at the father in Mina. You look at the sons in Mina. The son in Mina was 13 years old. The son in Karbala is 6 months old. You look at the mother of the son in Mina. What happens to her? She sees the marks on the neck of Hazrat Ismail, and she passes away 3 days later. You look at the mothers of the ones that were sacrificed in Karbala, the heads were thrown towards them, and they're still thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. The heads were thrown towards them, and they're still thanking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You look at the event in Mina, and you see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent a ram in the place of Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. Correct? He sent a ram in the place of Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. And in regards to this, in Tafsir al-Burhan, Sayyid Hashim Bahrani, he says, this ram that was sent, it was in heaven. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this ram for this specific purpose. But you can't say that Zibh al-Azim means this ram. Why? Because you have a ram on one side and you have a prophet on the other side. There's no way that a ram, no matter where it's created, no matter how great it is, there's no way that a ram, which is an animal, can be greater than a prophet. There's no way. So how can you say that by Zibh al-Azim is meant that ram? Because a lot of Sunni Mufassirin, they say that Zibh al-Azim is that ram. Our Shia Mufassirin, they say, how is that possible? This ram, in your eyes, this has a higher status than the status of a prophet? No. When it was sacrificed, then it became great. Well, we sacrifice every year. Does that mean that every ram that we sacrifice every year, it becomes great? How does merely being sacrificed make it great? Just merely being sacrificed does not just make it great. Alaykum salam wa rahmatullah. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. This sacrifice that Hazrat Ibrahim, Hazrat Ismail did was to show what? Devotion and surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. So then that devotion, that surrender would be to the utmost degree, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we have ransomed this with Zibh al-Azim. And you see that surrender, you see that devotion where? In Karbala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about this when He says in Surah Al-Fajr, when He says in Surah Al-Husayn, Wal Fajr, I swear by the Fajr, Walalayalin Ashar, and I swear by those 10 nights. What Fajr is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by? What 10 nights is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by? وَالشَّفْءِ وَالْوِتْرِ. What shaf and what witr is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala swearing by? And then when the night passes, what night is this that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by? That Fajr is the same Fajr that Hazrat Ali al-Akbar gave his last azan. Those 10 nights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is swearing by are those 10 nights of Muharram, when the caravan of Abu Abdullah al-Husayn alayhi salam was in Karbala. And that night when it disappears, what night is that? That is Sham-e Ghariban, when Lady Zainab sallallahu alaihi was still reciting Shaf and Witr prayers. So when you compare the two, you see that the sacrifice in Karbala was truly Zibhil Azim. Truly Zibhil Azim. This is the Zahiri meaning. The Batini meaning of that we've ransomed him with a great sacrifice. Sayyid Hashim Bahrani, he has another narration from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. He says that before that ram was sacrificed, Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he wished that he was able to sacrifice Hazrat Ismail, his son. Why? Because he wanted to show to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or he wanted to show to Allah subhanahu, prove to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he's willing to sacrifice his son. And he was willing to, but he wanted to make that happen in the real world. So when that doesn't happen, and he was told to sacrifice the ram, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that's when Hazrat Ibrahim, he starts to feel sad. When he starts to feel sad, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks him, Ya Ibrahim, let me ask you a question. Is your son more worthy to you? Do you love your son more, or do you love the son of Rasulullah more? Hazrat Ibrahim, he says, Ya Allah, I love the son of Rasulullah more. He says, Ya Ibrahim, would you be more sorrowful? Would you cry more over the loss of your son, or would you cry and be more sorrowful over the loss of his son? He says, Ya Allah, I would cry and be sorrowful over the loss of his son. I would cry more and be more sorrowful over the loss of his son. That's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Ya Ibrahim, his son will be killed in the desert of Karbala. His children will be thirsty. His children will be hungry. That's when Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam, he starts to cry over the events of Karbala. When he starts to cry over the events of Karbala, that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, we ransomed his loss, or we ransomed his sadness that he would have had for the loss of his son over the sadness of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, he's basically saying that the ransom that we're talking about here, the sacrifice that we're talking about here, is not between Imam Hussein alayhi salam and Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. Why? Because they're incomparable. They're incomparable. But the sadness that you would feel over the loss of your son, that could be comparable. That feeling can be comparable. And you can't compare the Ahlul Bayt with anyone. Why? Because Amir al-Mu'mineen himself, he says in Nahjul Balagha, but at the end of the second sermon, La yuqasu Ahlul Bayt min hazihi ummat. Do not compare the Ahlul Bayt with anyone from this ummah. From this ummah. And when you ask the ulama, what does it mean by this ummah? What does Amir al-Mu'mineen mean by this ummah? Does Amir al-Mu'mineen mean Ummat al-Muslimeen? If it's Ummat al-Muslimeen, what is Ummat al-Muslimeen? Anyone that reads La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah, then that means that from Hazrat Adam all the way to Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, all of those prophets read La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah. All of them. So then you can't compare them with even those prophets, let alone people like Abu Bakr, let alone people like Umar, let alone people like Usman. This is Amir al-Mu'min. So you do not compare Imam Hussein alayhi salam with Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam or Hazrat Ismail alayhi salam. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says that this, we're talking about the feeling, the emotion that was there. You can compare those two. And that's when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to Hazrat Ibrahim, Ya Ibrahim, we ransomed that loss that you would have felt of your son with the loss of the son of Rasulullah. This sacrifice, like I said in the beginning, brothers, sisters that are listening, that in Karbala, it's not wealth that was sacrificed. In Karbala, it was lives that were sacrificed. The only thing that they had left was their life. That was it. All of them already knew what was going to happen. All of them knew. The night of Ashur, Imam Hussein alayhi salam, he's showing each and every single one of his companions their place in Jannat. Each and every single one of them. And Hazrat Abbas alayhi salam, he's sitting down. And he says, Abbas, don't you want to see your place in Jannat? And Abul Fazl Abbas says to him, he says, Maula, my heaven, my Jannat is wherever you are. Ya Ali. Maula, Allahumma salli. Maula, my heaven is wherever you are. If you're here on this earth, then this earth is my heaven. If you're up in the heavens, then that is my heaven. This is the character of these 72 that were there. They knew that they weren't to come back. So they sacrificed everything. And the one who sacrificed the most is no other than Abu Abdullah al-Hussein alayhi salam. He sacrificed his sons, his daughters, his sisters. Brothers and sisters, do you know how many children left from Medina on this journey? Some narrations, they say that it was over 80 children. Over 80 children. When they get back to Medina, the narrations say that it was less than 6. Less than 6. What happened to all of these children? After Karbala, when the camps were being burnt, when the tents were being burnt, the children, they ran everywhere. Lady Zainab, whoever she could find, she finds, she brings back. From the 11th, when they were going from Karbala to Kufa, there would be children that would fall down from the camels, but the group would not wait and pick them up. They would just continue to move. From Kufa to Sham, if you go from Karbala towards Sham, you see every 20 miles, every 25 miles, this is Binat al-Hasan. You see every 20 miles, every 25 miles, this is the qabr of one of the shuhada or one of the people or one of the kids that were in Karbala. Why? Because when the Yazidi forces, they took these children, when they would fall down, some narrations state that they would just be trampled and they would continue to move. And when this caravan came to Sham, there's a reason Imam Sajjad alayhi salam, when he was asked by Minhal, when Minhal says, Mawla, where was it that you were troubled the most? And what does Imam reply? He says, Minhal, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham, Ash-Sham. Have you all ever wondered why Imam, he says Sham 3 times? He himself, he replies, when Minhal asks, Mawla, what happened in Sham? Imam, he says, Minhal, there were 7 things that happened in Sham that did not happen anywhere else. And he goes, Mawla, what were those? Imam, he says, Minhal, the first thing that happened in Sham that did not happen anywhere else was that when we were traveling and we were going through the streets, the women, they would throw hot water and they would throw burning wood out on our heads. Not when they threw the burning wood, my hands were tied. There was a piece of wood that struck my turban and it burned through my turban, it burned through my hair and it burned through my scalp. Minhal, this happened to everyone. He goes, Mawla, what was another thing that happened? Another thing that happened, that they kept us outside the city for 3 whole days before letting us enter. And what were they doing? They were preparing the whole city for celebrations. Minhal, another thing that happened was that they would purposely put the head of Abu Abdullah al-Hussein and Abu al-Fazl Abbas in front of Lady Zainab and Lady Kulthum. And they would purposely put the head of Ali al-Akbar and Ali al-Asghar in front of Lady Sakina. They would purposely put the heads in front of the ladies. Why? So the people can stare at these heads and the people can stare at the ladies. Minhal, it was in Sham where my sisters, they had no rida. Minhal, it was in Sham where we were almost sold as slaves, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected us. Minhal, it was in Sham when Sakina was almost sold as a slave, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protected her.
Minhal, it was in Sham, when the wife of Yazid, she comes and she sits in front of Lady Zainab, and she asks Lady Zainab, she says, where are you all from? And Lady Zainab, she says that we're from Medina. And that's when Hind, she asks, you're from Medina. If I ask you about someone from Medina, will you tell me how they are? Lady Zainab, she says, oh lady, who do you want to know about? And that's when Hind says, oh lady, can you tell me? There was someone named Abu Abdullah al-Hussein al-Islam. Can you tell me about him? He's the grandson of the Prophet. And Lady Zainab, she starts to cry. She said, who else do you want to know about? Oh lady, he had a brother. His name was Abbas. He was the mirror image of Ali al-Murtaza. Can you tell me about him? Lady Zainab, she starts to cry. She says, do you want to know about anyone else? And that's when Hind, she says, oh my lady, he had a son named Ali al-Akbar, who was the mirror image of Rasulullah. Can you tell him about him? That's when Lady Zainab, she starts to cry, and she says, oh Hind, will you not ask about Zainab and Kulthum? Will you not ask about the daughters of Fatima? That's when Hind, she gets mad and she says, oh my lady, do not take the names of these ladies in this darbar. Why? Because these ladies, they're so sanctified, they're the daughters of Fatima. That's when Zainab, she says, oh Hind, look at me, I am Zainab. You asked about Abu Abdullah, that's the head of Abu Abdullah. You asked about Ali al-Akbar, that's the head of Ali al-Akbar. You asked about Abu al-Fazl Abbas, that's the head of Abbas. Oh lady, that's the body of Ali al-Asghar. Those are the heads of my two sons. And Hind, she says, Ya Zainab, this is what has happened to you. That's when she leaves and she goes in front of Yazid in the courtyard. And Yazid, he sees her. And what does he do? He comes and he puts his abba over the head of Hind. And when he puts his abba, Imam Zain al-Abidin, he looks at the scene and he says to Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, if I had an abba, I would have put this abba on the head of Zainab ibn Kulthum. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Wallahmatullahi ala qawm az-zalimin. Matam Hussein. Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein. کربلا آئے ہے سجاد لیے اہل حرم. کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. آج ہوگا میرے بابا کا, آج ہوگا میرے بابا کا غم برا ماتم. کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. وہ جو در اپنے ہاتھوں سے سکینہ کو دیے, وہ جو در اپنے ہاتھوں سے سکینہ کو دیے, ان پہ ہے خون سکینہ کا, ان پہ ہے خون سکینہ کا. لے کے آئے ہیں ہم کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. لاڈلی آپ کی واپس تو نہیں لائے ہیں, لاڈلی آپ کی واپس تو نہیں لائے ہیں. پر بتاتا ہوں میری بہنا, پر بتاتا ہوں میری بہنا, پہ ہوئے جو ستم. کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. شکی بہنوں نے گرایا ہے خود کو اونٹوں سے, شکی بہنوں نے گرایا ہے خود کو اونٹوں سے. شور برپا ہوا گریا کا, شور برپا ہوا گریا کا اور ہوا ماتم. کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم, کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. دیکھنا نا کہ صحابی ہے قبر بابا کی, دیکھنا نا کہ صحابی ہے قبر بابا کی. رت پر لاش تھی بابا کی, رت پر لاش تھی بابا کی, جب گئے تھے ہم. کربلا آئے سجاد لیے اہل حرم, کربلا آئے سجاد لیے اہل حرم. آکے عباس کی تربت پہ کہا عابد نے, آکے عباس کی تربت پہ کہا عابد نے. دیکھ چچا تیری بہنوں کو, دیکھ چچا تیری بہنوں کو کھا گئے ہیں غم. کربلا آئے سجاد لیے اہل حرم, کربلا آئے سجاد لیے اہل حرم. سب شہیدوں کو سلام اپنا کربلا والا, سب شہیدوں کو سلام اپنا کربلا والو. بڑھتا جائے گا سلسلہ یہ, بڑھتا جائے گا سلسلہ یہ, سیاہ ہوگا نہ کم. کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم, کربلا آئے ہیں سجاد لیے اہل حرم. یا حسین یا حسین یا حسین اللہم صلی اللہ.
کل مجلس انشاءاللہ 8:30 بجے شروع ہوگی اور آقا طیب 9 بجے انشاءاللہ ممبر پہ تشریف لائیں گے. آپ حضرات سے التماس ہے کہ وقت کی پابندی کرتے ہوئے ٹائم پر تشریف لائیں.
اللہم صلی علی محمد وآل محمد. السلام علیکہ یا نبی اللہ, السلام علیکہ یا حبیب اللہ, السلام علیکہ یا حجت اللہ, السلام علیکہ یا رحمت للعالمین, السلام علیکہ یا باعث الہدی و رحمت اللہ وبرکاتہ, السلام علیکہ یا قاتل المشرکین, السلام علیکہ علی ابن ابی طالب علیہ السلام, السلام علیکہ بنت رسول اللہ, السلام علیکہ فاطمہ الزہرا سید النساء العالمین, السلام علیکہ یا ابا محمد حسن مجتبی علیہ السلام, السلام علیکہ یا ابا عبداللہ الحسین علیہ السلام, السلام علیکہ وارث آدم صفت اللہ, السلام علیکہ وارث نوح نبی اللہ, السلام علیکہ وارث ابراہیم خلیل اللہ, السلام علیکہ وارث موسیٰ کلیم اللہ, السلام علیکہ وارث عیسیٰ روح اللہ, السلام علیکہ وارث محمد حبیب اللہ, السلام علیکہ وارث علی امیر المومنین ولی اللہ, السلام علیکہ ابن محمد المصطفیٰ, السلام علیکہ ابن علی المرتضیٰ, السلام علیکہ ابن فاطمہ الزہرا سید النساء العالمین, السلام علیکہ ابن خدیجہ الکبریٰ, السلام علیکہ اصحار اللہ وابن صاری والوتر الموتور, اشہد انکا قد اقمت الصلاة وآتیت الزکاة وامرت بالمعروف ونہیت عن المنکر وآطاعت اللہ ورسولہ حتی اتاک الیقین, فلان اللہ امتا قتلتک ولعن اللہ امتا ظلمتک ولعن اللہ امتا سامعت بذلک فرضیت بے. یا مولا یا ابا عبداللہ
أشهد أنك كنت نورا في الأسلاب الشامخة والأرحام المطهرة لم تنجسك الجاهلية بأنجاسها ولم تلبسك من مدلهمات ثيابها وأشهد أنك من دائم الدين وأركان المؤمنين وأشهد أنك الإمام البر التقي الرزي الزكي الهادي المهدي وأشهد أن الأئمة من ولدك كلمة التقوى وأعلام الهدى والأروة الوثقى والحجة على أهل الدنيا وأشهد الله وملائكته وأنبياءه ورسوله أني بكم مؤمن وبيابكم موقن بشرائع ديني وخواتيم عملي وقلبي لقلبكم سلم أمري لأمركم متبع صلوات الله عليكم وعلى أرواحكم وعلى أجسادكم وعلى أجسامكم وعلى شاهدكم وعلى غائبكم وعلى ظاهركم وعلى باطنكم يا رب مولا باطن الإسلام. السلام عليكم يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم أيها العبد الصالمتي لله ورسوله وأشهد أنك قد جاهدت ونصحت وصبرت حتى أتاك اليقين. لعن الله الظالمين لكم من الأولين والآخرين والحاكم بدرجة الجحيم. يا شهد عليك بالإسلام. السلام عليكم يا ابن رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا ابن نبي الله. السلام عليكم يا ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا ابن الحسين الشهيد. السلام عليكم يا أيها الشهيد وابن الشهيد. السلام عليكم يا المظلوم وابن المظلوم. لعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة سمعت بذلك فرضيت به. يا شهداء الله الإسلام. السلام عليكم يا أولياء الله وأحبه. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وعبده. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الناصر. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله بأبي أنتم وأمي تبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. ويا ليتني كنت معكم فأحفظ معكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي السلام. السلام عليك يا جعفر بن محمد عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا موسى بن جعفر عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا علي بن موسى عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا مولانا غريب الغرباء. السلام عليك يا معين الضعفاء والفقراء. السلام عليك يا شمس الشموس ليس النفوس أيها المدفون بأرض الدوس. السلام عليك يا محمد بن علي عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا علي بن محمد عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا حسن بن علي عليه السلام. السلام عليك يا مولانا صاحب الأسر والزمان اللمان 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 من فتنة الزمان. السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن. السلام عليك يا إمام الإنس والجان. أجل الله تعالى فرجك وسال الله تعالى مخرجك وظهورك ورحمة الله وبركاته. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم قل لوليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طاعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين.
Brothers, please can you recite 5 times Amma Yujibu Dua Sehat for a little 8-month-old boy Ali Akbar Abbas in Moreno Valley who's been given a diagnosis of cancer? Or a heart problem. Can you please recite Amma Yujibu 5 times for the well-being of this 8-month-old boy? Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Amma yujibu al-muqtarra iza da'ahu wa yakshifu as-su'. 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 Ya Allah, بحق Muhammad wa ala Muhammad, please give shifa to this 8-month-old baby. And please give shifa to all the mu'mineen, mu'minat that require shifa. Walhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
It has to be like this every day.
Babulilm